Did you ever think a simple prayer request could summon an entire army of divine judgment, or at least God's most devoted soldiers? My husband, Marcus, was about to find out. He thought he was just checking into a hotel. He did not realize he was checking into his own custom-made hell. My name is Eliza. I am 36 years old, and I am a senior auditor for Syntropy Risk Solutions. My world is built on numbers, on verifiable facts, on ledgers that must balance. In my job, there is no room for interpretation. There is only the truth of the transaction. This is why Savannah, Georgia, has always felt like a foreign country to me. Savannah is beautiful, suffocatingly so. The air hangs heavy with the scent of jasmine and the weight of history, a place where Spanish moss drips from the oaks like unspoken secrets. It is a city of tradition, of appearances, of judgments passed over mint juleps on wraparound porches. And it is my husband's world, not mine. My husband is Marcus Rollins, 38 years old, and to this day, Savannah's golden boy. He is the charmer, the smooth-talking fundraiser for the Heart of Georgia Foundation, the city's largest local charity. He moves through these ancestral homes and garden parties with an ease that I, in my Chicago-bred directness, have never been able to mimic. He is also, completely and suffocatingly, his mother's son. We were in town for the annual Heart of Georgia Gala, the absolute pinnacle of the Savannah social calendar. This year, it was even more critical. His mother, the formidable Matilda Rollins, was the honorary chair. I was stationed in the guest bedroom of Matilda's sprawling, perfect mansion, a house so preserved it felt more like a museum than a home. The air smelled permanently of lemon oil and old money. The distance between us had been growing for months. Marcus was swamped with gala preparations. That was the official story. It meant late-night calls taken in the garden, hushed and urgent. It meant last-minute donor meetings that stretched well past midnight. I am an auditor. I am trained to spot discrepancies, and my husband's life was suddenly full of them. But I loved him. Or rather, I was contractually bound to the version of him I had married, and I was trying to honor the terms. I was dressing for the pre-gala cocktail party, zipping up a dress I felt ridiculous in, when I saw his tuxedo jacket laid out on the chaise lounge. A small white stub of paper was peeking out of the breast pocket. I pulled it out. It was a valet parking ticket, not for the gala venue. It was for the Magnolia Leaf Inn. The Magnolia Leaf is a boutique hotel on the other side of town, known for its discretion and romantic, secluded suites. It is not a place you hold a donor meeting. My heart didn't pound. It didn't break. It simply stopped, and the blood in my veins turned to ice. My auditor brain took over. I sat on the edge of the perfectly made bed, my high heels sinking into the antique rug, and I opened the Find My app on my phone. His phone. The one he was supposedly using to coordinate logistics at the gala. It was pinging its location from the Magnolia Leaf Inn. I didn't say a word to Matilda, who was downstairs directing her catering staff. I took my clutch, walked out the heavy front door into the humid evening air, and got into my rental car. My hands were perfectly steady on the steering wheel. I drove across town, the lovely, historic squares blurring past my window, my mind a quiet, cold, calculating machine. I parked across the street, under the shadows of a massive live oak. The inn was lit softly, all warm glows and inviting ivy. I didn't have to wait long. I saw him through the wide lobby windows. He was not in a tuxedo. He was wearing a casual linen shirt, his sleeves rolled up. He was laughing, leaning against the check-in desk. And then she appeared, a young, stunningly beautiful woman. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and he kissed her. A deep, lingering, familiar kiss. I recognized her instantly. Serena, the daughter of the Foundation's single largest donor. I watched them. He picked up a room key. He slung his arm around her waist, and they walked toward the elevators, his head bent toward hers, whispering something that made her throw her head back and laugh. I sat there for a full minute, the engine idling. I did not cry. The emotion that flooded me was not grief. It was a cold, sharp, righteous anger. It was the same feeling I get when I find a hidden ledger, a deliberately falsified expense report, the kind of anger that clarifies everything. He hadn't just broken a promise, he had created a discrepancy. And I, Eliza Rollins, am an auditor. It is my job to find the discrepancy and expose it. I put the car in drive. I did not drive to the gala. I drove straight back to Matilda's perfect, quiet house. My mind was already drafting the report. A plan was forming, clicking into place with the cold, satisfying precision of a balance sheet. I walked past the grand staircase, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor, and went straight to Matilda's study. It was her sanctuary, a room preserved in amber, smelling of antique furniture polished with lemon oil and the dry, sweet scent of old books that were never actually read. It was the command center from which she managed her social empire. I sat down in her leather-backed chair, the seat still holding the faint imprint of her presence. I didn't think about Marcus and Serena in that hotel room. I didn't think about the betrayal, the years wasted, the lies. To do so would be inefficient. Emotion is a liability in an audit, and I was now auditing my marriage. No, I thought about the system that supported Marcus. Marcus was not a self-made man. He was a carefully curated product, and his mother was the lead designer. His greatest weakness was not me. I was a replaceable line item, a Chicago variable she had never liked. His true vulnerability, the one thing that could bring the entire structure crashing down, was his mother's reputation. In Savannah, reputation is not just a social currency, it is the entire economy. And Matilda Rollins's reputation was a blue-chip stock built on decades of ruthless charity work, iron-fisted committee leadership, and the most powerfully judgmental piety in the state of Georgia. I looked at her laptop, a sleek silver model sitting closed on the mahogany desk. I opened it. The login screen glowed. I typed in the password, Grace, 1955, her confirmation name and birth year. Predictability, I find, is the sister of hypocrisy. The desktop opened. It was impeccably organized. I navigated to her email, then to her contacts. And there it was, the Holy Grail, a contact group labeled Women's Benevolent Society. This was not just a church group. This was the jury. This was a collection of 20 of the most powerful, well-connected, and viciously judgmental women in the city. They were the arbiters of social standing, the whisper network that could make or break a family with a single, strategically placed bless her heart. I opened a private browser tab and created a new, anonymous email address. Something disposable. Servant of Grace at Proton Mail. My fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. I was not a scorned wife. I was a strategist deploying an asset. I drafted the message, choosing the words with the precision of a surgeon. The subject line, Urgent Prayer Request, Matilda Rollins. The body was short, effective, and weaponized their own language against them. Dear sisters in Christ, please hold our dear Matilda in your prayers. A terrible burden has fallen upon her, one she is bearing in silent fear. We must be her strength. Please pray for her son, Marcus, who is in profound spiritual peril at this very moment. He is at the Magnolia Leaf Inn, room 308, entangled with a young woman. Please, I beg you, go and offer your strength and your guidance. Go and bring this lost lamb back to the fold. Do not let sin win this night. God is watching. I read it over once. It was perfect. It was a call to arms disguised as a plea for help. It gave them a location. It gave them a room number. And it gave them a righteous purpose. I selected the Women's Benevolent Society group. My finger hovered over the send button. I clicked it. But an audit must be thorough. You must account for all variables. Sending the righteous army was good, ensuring the target's primary defender was also alerted, creating a simultaneous pincer movement of chaos. That was better. I sent a second anonymous message, this one directly to Matilda's personal phone number, which I knew by heart. Your church group is heading to the Magnolia Leaf to save Marcus from room 308. You should get there first. I closed the laptop, wiping the trackpad and keyboard clean with a silk handkerchief from the desk drawer. I left the study, the scent of lemon oil and old paper following me out. The trap was set. Now, a different kind of race was on. It was a beautiful mathematical equation. The velocity of public judgment versus the desperation of a family cover-up. I was very, very interested to see which one would have the greater force. I went back upstairs to the guest room. The air was still and heavy. I unzipped the dress I had on and let it fall to the floor. From my garment bag, I pulled out the dress I had originally planned to wear to the gala. It was a stunning, severe column of scarlet red silk. As I stepped into it, I felt a strange, profound sense of peace settle over me. The kind of peace that comes when a complex audit finally balances, when all the disparate, messy numbers finally align to tell one clear story. I was clasping my diamond earrings when the first sounds of the storm broke. A door slammed downstairs. Matilda's voice, usually so controlled and melodic, was a high-pitched, frantic screech. It's a lie, a slander, everyone must stay home. I walked to the top of the grand staircase and looked down. Matilda was at the bottom, her back to me, clutching her phone to her ear. She was already in her evening gown, a tasteful but severe navy blue, but her hair was coming undone from its perfect coif. She was pacing the marble, a caged animal. I descended the stairs slowly, my red dress a stark contrast to the home's muted palette. Matilda, is something wrong? You look unwell. She spun around, her face a mask of pure panic. She saw me, and her expression flickered, attempting to reassemble itself into one of gracious concern. She failed. Eliza, my dear. She forced a laugh that sounded like cracking glass. Just a last-minute catering disaster. You know how these things are? She was vibrating with tension. Listen, darling, the traffic will be dreadful. You should go on to the gala venue ahead of me. Get us a good table by the stage. I just have to fix this mess. She was already moving toward the front door, grabbing her keys from a silver tray. Of course, Matilda, I said, my voice smooth as silk. I'll see you there. She didn't even look back. She yanked the heavy door open and practically ran to her black Mercedes, her tires squealing on the cobblestone driveway as she pulled away. I watched her go. Then I walked calmly to my own rental car. I did not turn right, toward the gala. I turned left, toward the Magnolia Leaf Inn. I parked in the same spot as before, across the street, nestled in the deep shadows of a centuries-old oak. I turned off the engine, and I waited. The night was quiet, the inn glowing in the twilight. I didn't have to wait long. First, a large, white 15-passenger van with the First Presbyterian Church logo printed on the side lumbered around the corner. It pulled into the circular driveway and stopped, blocking the entrance. It was immediately followed by a procession of high-end sedans, a Lexus, 2 Cadillacs, another Mercedes. The Women's Benevolent Society had arrived. The doors opened, and they emerged, not as a prayer group, but as a posse. They were in their evening finest, pearls and diamonds glinting, but they were armed. They clutched their Bibles like weapons, their faces set in grim, righteous fury. And leading the charge, stepping out of the Lexus with the bearing of a general, was Mrs. Abernathy, Matilda's chief rival for control of the church's flower committee and, by extension, all of Savannah society. They were not here for a quiet word of prayer. They were here for blood. They organized themselves on the sidewalk, a formidable phalanx of coiffed hair and Chanel bags, and began to march, as one, toward the lobby doors. At that exact second, Matilda's black Mercedes came screeching around the corner, laying on the horn. She must have seen them converging. She slammed on her brakes, parking half on the curb, and leaped from the car, leaving the door wide open. "Ladies, ladies, stop!" Matilda shrieked, running in her heels across the driveway to cut them off at the entrance. "Please, this is a terrible misunderstanding." Mrs. Abernathy stopped, just feet from the door, and slowly turned to face her. Her smile was thin, cold, and utterly triumphant. "We are here for an intervention. Matilda," she said, her voice carrying clear across the street to where I sat. "Now, please, get out of the way." As I sat there, cocooned in the dark silence of the rental car, I watched the chaos I had unleashed, the swarm of righteous women forcing their way past a sputtering, defeated Matilda. It looked like an impulsive act, a wife's desperate, messy revenge. They were all wrong. This was not an impulse. This was a final, calculated entry in a ledger I had been building for 6 months. The first discrepancy had appeared half a year ago. Marcus, in his role as the Foundation's rainmaker, took a critical fundraising trip to Aspen. He was gone for 4 days. He returned triumphant, boasting of new pledges and skiing in the thin mountain air. I, being his wife, smiled and unpacked his bag. But I am, by nature and by profession, an auditor, out of habit. I later reviewed the Foundation's public filings, their Form 990s. I looked at the quarterly expense reports, flights to Aspen, a suite at a 5-star resort. Meals at restaurants I knew were outrageously expensive. None of it was there. The trip, officially, had never happened. I asked him about it, casually, over dinner one night. "Oh, that," he said, waving his hand dismissively. He gave me his most charming, indulgent smile. "Darling, I paid for that myself. A personal sacrifice for the Foundation. We're trying to keep overhead low." He reached across the table, his touch meant to be reassuring. "You don't need to audit our whole life, Eliza. It makes you sound so small." He made me feel petty. He was supposed to. That was the goal. But he had made a critical error. He had not made me feel small. He had made me suspicious. That night, after he fell asleep, I began a real audit, a secret, forensic investigation of the Heart of Georgia Foundation. My laptop, my secure connection, my skills. While Marcus charmed Savannah, I dug. It took me less than a week to confirm my hypothesis the Foundation was a house of cards. My husband, the golden boy, was not just cheating on me. He was systematically defrauding his donors, the very people who trusted him, who revered his family name. The mechanism was elegant in its simplicity. He was moving large sums of money from the unrestricted general fund money meant for children's literacy programs and community grants into special projects. These projects had vague, inspiring names. The Savannah Green Beautification Project. For one, I am thorough. I followed the money. I cross-referenced the beautification project payments with public property records. The land being beautified, a sprawling, undeveloped tract by the river, was owned by a holding company registered to Serena's father. Marcus wasn't just having an affair. He was in business with his mistress's family, using charity money as their startup capital. But the real proof, the item that sealed his fate, I found on our home network. He had a drive on the family desktop computer, one he thought was secured. He did not realize that I, the person who set up the network, had administrator access to everything. There, in a folder mislabeled Old Tax Returns, I found it the second set of books, the real ledger, the one that detailed the embezzlement, the one that showed exactly how much he was skimming and where it was all going. He was deep in the red. He was hiding a massive financial hole. That's what tonight's gala was truly about. It was not a celebration of charity. It was a desperate, last-ditch attempt to raise enough new, unrestricted cash to cover the chasm he'd created before the annual auditors, the real ones, not just his wife, arrived next week. He was using this party to try and cover his tracks, and I was using his affair to expose them. I watched the scene unfold from my dark car. The lobby of the Magnolia Leaf Inn had descended into a farce. Mrs. Abernathy, fueled by a righteousness I had personally manufactured, physically shouldered past the sputtering, tuxedo-clad concierge. The 20 women of the Benevolent Society fell in line behind her, a phalanx of pearls and piety. They were heading for the elevators, and they were singing. It was a hymn, a militant, off-key rendition of Onward, Christian Soldiers. They were actually singing it as they marched. Matilda, her face streaked with tears, scrambled after them, her pleas turning to threats. "You don't understand. This is private. You are ruining me. You will all be hearing from my lawyers. Stop this instant." Mrs. Abernathy hit the up button. "We are here to save his soul, Matilda. It is God's work, not man's law. That guides us now." The young manager behind the desk was frantically speaking into his phone. "Yes, I need the police. A large group of women. They're harassing my guests. They're..." Singing. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. The entire group piled in, a crush of silk, perfume, and holy fury. Matilda, in a final desperate act, dove in with them just as the doors closed, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. I watched the floor indicator light up. 1, 2, 3. I clicked the side button on my phone. The voice recorder app opened. I pressed the red circle. It was active. I smoothed down the silk of my red dress, stepped out of the car, and crossed the street. My heels clicked decisively on the pavement. All eyes in the lobby, the manager, the bellhops, a terrified couple trying to check in snapped to me as I entered. I was a column of scarlet, a point of absolute calm in their escalating chaos. I walked to the front desk. The manager looked at me, his eyes wide with desperation. "Ma'am, I am so sorry. We have I'm Mrs. Rollins," I said, my voice quiet, clear, and cutting through his panic. "My husband, Marcus, is upstairs. I believe you've just met my mother-in-law. I'd like to wait for him." I smiled, a small, polite, razor-thin smile. I did not wait for his response. I turned and walked to a plush, brocaded sofa in the middle of the lobby, arranging my dress as I sat, and crossed my legs. I held my phone in my lap, screen dark, microphone pointed forward, and I waited. The lobby was silent for a moment, save for the manager's hushed, frantic whispers to the police. Then, we heard it. Even from 3 floors up, it was distinct. A woman's shriek, a deep, male-voiced, "What the hell?" A door slamming open, a chorus of horrified gasps. And then, the elevator dinged. The doors slid open. Serena burst out first, a blur of blonde hair and panic. Her dress was half unzipped, her lipstick smeared across her chin. She was clutching a designer handbag to her chest like a shield. She didn't look left or right. She sprinted, barefoot on the marble, right through the lobby and out the front doors into the night. A second later, Marcus stumbled out. His eyes were wild, his hair was a mess, his shirt was completely unbuttoned, and he was frantically, uselessly trying to tuck it in and fasten it at the same time. He looked like a man who had just survived a shipwreck. He turned, saw me sitting on the sofa. His entire body went rigid. The blood drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, pale white. "Eliza," he whispered. "Eliza, what are you?" He never got to finish the question. The Women's Benevolent Society flooded out of the elevator behind him, their faces a mixture of scandalized horror and pure, ecstatic gossip. Matilda stumbled out last, her head bowed, weeping into her hands. Mrs. Abernathy, her chest puffed with triumph, stepped forward. She raised a perfectly manicured finger and pointed it straight at my husband's heart. "Adulterer," she boomed, her voice echoing across the marble. "You are an adulterer." Marcus Rollins, watching Mrs. Abernathy's triumphant, vengeful declaration. I felt a memory surface. It was the first time I met Matilda, 10 years ago, at a garden party at this very same mansion. Marcus had brought me home, his brilliant Chicago girl. Matilda had been gracious, all soft smiles and southern charm. She took my hand in hers, her grip surprisingly strong, her eyes cataloging every detail. "Chicago," she'd said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "How industrial. We're so much simpler here. Dear, you'll find we value tradition over, well, efficiency." She had labeled me an outsider in under 5 seconds, a cold, unfeeling variable in her warm, traditional world. I was too modern, too direct, and not nearly Southern enough. I was not, and would never be, one of them. She never saw me as a person. I was a foreign entity, a potential disruption to her most precious asset, Marcus. Her control over him was absolute. It was not just the emotional smothering of a doting mother. It was financial. It was total. The magnificent house on the square they lived in. It was in Matilda's name. The prestigious, high-paying job as director of the foundation secured entirely through Matilda's connections, a position she had essentially created for him. He was a 40-year-old man, still living on his mother's allowance. Just one that came with a 6-figure salary and a corner office. He was a prince, but she held the key to the kingdom. And as I sat there, watching him stand there in his ruined shirt, it all became perfectly, chillingly clear. This wasn't just about sex. This wasn't a midlife crisis. The affair with Serena was a business transaction. Marcus was not just cheating because he was weak or lustful, though he was both those things. He was cheating to secure a new investor. He was trying to leverage Serena's family money, her father's massive influence, to build his own empire. This entire sordid affair was a desperate, pathetic attempt to finally cut the financial umbilical cord to his mother. He wasn't building a new life. He was attempting a hostile takeover, using the only assets he had: his charm and his title. I remembered other incidents, little mistakes I had dismissed at the time. The summer after college, when he'd been let go from a junior brokerage firm, Matilda had called it a misunderstanding and made a few calls. The investment in a friend's tech startup that vanished, taking $50,000 with it. Matilda had quietly replenished his accounts, scolding him gently on the porch while she cut him another check. She wasn't a blind, doting mother who didn't know her son. She was his chief enabler. She was the one who cleaned up his messes, buried his failures, and, in doing so, ensured he would never, ever be able to leave her. She had been his co-conspirator all along, complicit in the creation of the very monster now standing in the lobby. She didn't want a successful son, she wanted a dependent one. And then, the final piece clicked into place. I remembered a conversation from last Christmas, sitting on Matilda's porch. She was sipping sweet tea, complaining about Mrs. Abernathy's ghastly choice for the Christmas pageant. "Oh, but it doesn't matter," Matilda had said with a smug little laugh, waving her hand. "Marcus can handle her. He could convince my entire church gang to do anything he wants. They just love him. They'd follow him anywhere." I looked at the chaos in the lobby, at the church gang, who had indeed followed him, at Matilda, who was now weeping, her face a ruin of makeup and despair, at Marcus, who was finally, completely exposed. Matilda had been right. They would follow him anywhere. She just never imagined that I would be the one to give them the directions. I had used the very weapon she'd identified, the one she'd been so proud of, and turned it back on both of them. The lobby was a courtroom. The benevolent society was the jury. Mrs. Abernathy the gleeful prosecutor, and the hotel staff the horrified gallery. All eyes were on the three of us: the adulterer, the weeping mother, and the wife, sitting perfectly still in her red dress. Matilda, Her face a grotesque mask of ruined makeup and tears, finally found her voice. But it was not a voice of sorrow. It was a shriek of pure, uncut rage, and it was aimed at me. "You," she screamed, lunging a step toward me, her fingers shaking. "You did this. You vile, jealous, barren woman. You set us up. You set him up. You wanted this to happen." I rose slowly from the sofa, smoothing the silk of my dress. I did not raise my voice. I did not have to. I did. Matilda, what exactly? Did I do? All I did was come to Savannah to support my husband at his gala. The gala he's supposed to be at right now. The one you are the chair of. I'm just waiting for my husband. What did you do here? Marcus, seeing his mother's attack fail, saw his opening. He tried to play his final card, the only one he's ever had his charm, his ability to make himself the victim. He took a step toward me, his hands outstretched, his unbuttoned shirt flapping. "Eliza, baby, please, it's not what you think. I swear to you, that woman, Serena, she's unstable. She's been stalking me. She followed me here. She's obsessed I was trying to let her down easy." A loud, unladylike snort came from Mrs. Abernathy. She was enjoying herself immensely. "Unstable. She looked quite comfortable in your arms when we opened the door. Marcus. Very, very comfortable." Marcus winced, but his eyes were locked on me, pleading. "Eliza." I held up my hand, and he stopped. I looked at the phone in my other hand, the one I had not put down. The red light of the recorder was still visible. "Stalking you, Marcus." I asked, my voice as calm as a ledger. "Is that the official story? Is that what you're going to tell the Foundation's board of directors, or perhaps the Internal Revenue Service?" The color drained from his face. It was not the white of shock anymore. It was the gray of true, bottomless fear. Matilda froze. The tears stopped. What? What are you talking about? What does the IRS have to do with this filth?" I turned my head, my eyes locking on Marcus, but I spoke for the entire room. My voice was crisp, clear, and projected perfectly across the marble. "I'm talking about the $1.2 million you diverted from the Children's Literacy Fund into a special projects account over the last 18 months. Marcus." There was a collective gasp from the Benevolent Society. This was a new, delicious, and far more serious plot twist. I continued, the words sharp, precise. "The same special projects account that's been paying the lease on a lovely 2-bedroom apartment in Atlanta. An apartment, I found, that is registered to a Miss Serena. You know, the unstable woman who was stalking you." The jury of church ladies was practically vibrating, their eyes, wide with horror and delight, snapped between me, Marcus, and Matilda. This was not just garden-variety adultery. This was not a simple sin they could pray over. This was theft, grand larceny. This was a scandal that would tear down the entire foundation. Marcus was speechless, his mouth opening and closing in silent, fish-like horror. I turned, my gaze finally settling on the woman who had started it all. I looked at Matilda, whose world was visibly crumbling, her entire family legacy turning to ash right here in the lobby. "Oh, Matilda," I said, my voice softening just a fraction, a surgeon showing pity for the incision. "You didn't know, you just thought he was a sinner." I paused, letting the final blade slide in. "You didn't know he was a criminal." I had the floor. The entire room was silent, hanging on my every word. I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a senior auditor delivering my findings, and the lobby was my boardroom. The $1.2 million was just the main transfer. I continued, my voice level. It was moved over 7 installments, laundered through a shell corporation called M.R. Consulting. Rather vain. Marcus. Using your own initials. I saw Mrs. Abernathy's eyes widen. She was mentally taking notes, her face a mask of appalled fascination. Consulting, I explained, then issued a series of fraudulent invoices to the foundation. Fakes, of course, for consulting services on the Savannah Green Beautification Project. The same project, as I'm sure the board will be fascinated to learn. That involves developing land owned by Serena's father. Serena wasn't just your mistress. Marcus. She was your business partner. She was ensuring her family's money was being donated, washed through your children's charity, and then funneled right back into their own pockets. It's a very neat, very tidy, and very illegal little loop. Marcus just stood there, his mouth slack. He was dumbfounded. He had been so busy managing his emotional, hysterical wife, a character he'd invented, that he never once considered he was living with a forensic professional. He had been outmaneuvered, not outcried. Matilda, however, found one last reserve of her old, formidable strength. Her grief vanished, replaced by a final, desperate roar. This is libel slander. You have no proof. They are all lies from a bitter, jealous woman. We will sue you. We will sue you for everything you have. I almost smiled. I let a small, cold laugh escape. Sue me with what money? Matilda. I took a step toward her. The money from the foundation. I think you'll find that's rather tied up in legal proceedings very soon. Or perhaps, I said, dropping my voice just enough so the ladies behind her had to lean in to hear, you'll sue me with the money you personally transferred last month, the $250,000 you wired from your private savings account to the foundation's general fund, just to plug the hole before the gala, the one you tried to hide as an anonymous donation. Matilda's face went from rage to a pale ashen gray. The ladies behind her gasped. They knew. I believe the legal term for that, Matilda, I added softly, is accessory. You weren't just blind, you were complicit. That was the word. That was the one that did it. The accusation of sin, she could handle. The accusation of crime, of being a partner to her son's failure, was a mortal blow. Matilda Rollins, the queen of Savannah society, crumpled. She didn't faint. She collapsed, falling backward into a hard, ornate lobby chair, her hands falling uselessly into her lap. She was broken. At that exact moment, the young hotel manager, who had been listening to the entire financial execution with wide, terrified eyes, spoke up. He cleared his throat, his voice trembling. Mrs. Rollins, he said, looking at me, the new, undisputed center of power in the room. The police, they're on their way, for the disturbance. He glanced at Marcus, at the weeping Matilda, and then back at me. Should I inform them that there is another matter to be discussed? The entire lobby was silent. The approach of distant sirens could just be heard. I looked at my husband. He was staring at me. His entire life, his entire future, hanging in the balance of my next words. That, I said, depends on him. The sirens were no longer distant. They were close, just a few streets away, a wailing, metallic promise. The benevolent society, huddled together, looked nervously toward the door. Their appetite for drama was warring with their deep-seated aversion to actual law enforcement. I turned to them, my voice smooth and gracious, as if I were closing a successful board meeting. Thank you all for your concern. Ladies, I looked directly at Mrs. Abernathy. I truly believe this intervention has been a complete success. My husband has seen the error of his ways. Mrs. Abernathy, sensing her absolute victory over her rival, positively beamed. This story, in all its glorious, sordid detail, was hers to tell. She had not only witnessed Matilda's downfall, she had participated. Of course, dear, she said, patting my arm in a sudden false show of solidarity. We are all so glad we could help. We'll, uh, we'll see you at the gala. We'll save you a plate." "You are too kind," I said. "Please, don't let this ruin your evening." They filed out, a buzzing swarm of excited whispers, clambering back into their church van and luxury sedans, already dissecting the night's events, crafting the narrative that would destroy the Rollins name by dawn. And then there were three: me, Marcus, and the shattered, hollow-eyed shell of Matilda, still slumped in the chair. The sirens were just outside now, red and blue lights flashing across the lobby's marble floor, painting us in stark, alternating colors. Marcus took a desperate, staggering step toward me. His face was a piteous wreck of snot, sweat, and fear. "Eliza, Eliza, please," he whimpered. "Please don't. I'll do anything, anything. Don't let them arrest me. I'll fix it." "I am sure you will, Marcus," I said. I reached into my small scarlet clutch. My hand did not shake. I pulled out a set of folded documents and a slim, expensive pen. I unfolded them and placed them on the low, glass coffee table between us. "This is a post-nuptial agreement. It's also a divorce settlement." He stared at the papers as if they were written in a language he didn't understand. "The terms are simple," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the glass. "I get the apartment in Chicago. I get the car. I get 100% of our joint investments and my own retirement accounts. You get your debts. And you get your mother's. It's a clean transaction. Marcus. All assets to me. All liabilities to you. But this," he whispered, his eyes scanning the pages. "I'll be ruined. I'll have nothing." "You already are ruined, Marcus," I said, the red and blue lights flashing across his pale, terrified face. "This just makes it legal. This just codifies the truth." The sound of car doors slamming came from outside. The police were here. "Sign it," I said, my voice low and urgent. "Sign it right now, and I will walk to that door and I will tell those officers that this was a simple, hysterical family dispute. I will send my full, complete, and utterly damning audit to the Foundation's board of directors tomorrow, anonymously. Of course, they will fire you. They will prosecute you. They will handle you. But I leaned in, will not be the one to have you put in handcuffs tonight." He looked at me, then at the door, then at his mother. He was trapped. He fumbled for the pen, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold it. And then Matilda moved. It was not a collapse. It was an explosion. In a final, primal surge of protective, poisoned rage, she launched herself, not at me, but at her son. She flew out of the chair, her hands clawed. "You fool!" she shrieked, her voice a raw, animal sound. "You weak, pathetic, useless fool! You didn't just ruin yourself, you ruined us. You ruined me." And with all the force left in her body, Matilda Rollins slapped her golden boy, her prince, clear across the face. It was not a tap. It was a full-bodied, cracking blow that echoed through the entire lobby, a sound louder and more final than any police siren. The sound of the slap hung in the air, sharp and final, just as two uniformed police officers walked through the front doors. "Seems like there is a problem in here," the older one said, his hand resting on his belt, his eyes taking in the scene. Matilda, panting with rage, Marcus, holding his bright red cheek, his shirt hanging open, and me, standing calm in a sea of emotional wreckage. I stepped forward, my voice a smooth balm of manufactured concern. "Officer, I am so terribly sorry. You've walked into a dreadful misunderstanding." I gestured gracefully toward Matilda, who was now just staring, her chest heaving. "My mother-in-law, she's been under so much stress planning the gala. The Heart of Georgia gala. She's just so excited." I turned my gaze to Marcus, who looked at me in pure shock. "And my husband," I said, a small, sad laugh in my voice, "is a terrible prankster. He just told her the entire event was canceled. As a joke." I lowered my voice, as if sharing a confidence. "Her nerves just aren't what they used to be. He took it too far." The officer looked at Marcus, his disheveled state, the weeping woman, the red mark on his face. "A joke?" he asked, his voice flat with disbelief. I gave a small, resigned smile. "Men," I said, as if it explained everything. "What can you possibly do?" Marcus, seeing the single, narrow plank of salvation I had thrown him, grabbed it. He nodded frantically, trying to compose himself. "Yes," he stammered. "Yes, officer, a joke. A stupid, stupid joke. It was my fault. I am so sorry for the disturbance. We're fine. It won't happen again." Matilda said nothing. She was staring at me, her eyes no longer filled with tears, but with a new, dark, profound hatred. She understood, in that moment, what I had done. I had just saved her public face from the police, and in doing so, proved that I owned it completely. I could save it, or I could destroy it, at my leisure. The officer sighed, annoyed. "Fine, just keep it down. We have actual work to do." He and his partner turned and walked back out into the night. The moment the doors closed, the tension snapped. I looked at Marcus. "The pen," I said. I pointed to the papers on the coffee table. His hands were shaking so violently he could barely pick it up. He stumbled forward, bent over the table like a man in pain, and scribbled his name on the signature line. It was a jagged, ugly mark. He pushed the papers toward me, a look of utter defeat on his face. I didn't take them. Instead, I took my phone from my clutch. I held it over the document, and the flash was a bright, clinical white in the dim lobby. Click. I captured a perfect high-resolution image of the fully executed signature block. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, sliding my phone back into my bag. He looked at me, confused. "Aren't you—" "My lawyer has the originals," I said simply. "This was just the courtesy copy. I only needed to witness the signature." I stood up, adjusting the sleeve of my red dress. "The photo is for my records." I turned to the woman who was now, officially, my past. "And Matilda." Her head snapped up, her eyes venomous. "One last piece of housekeeping," I said, my voice light, almost conversational. "I sent that prayer request from your computer, in your study, from your personal IP address. The digital trail is a straight line right back to you. They will find it." I smiled. If I were you, I would find a new church, and a very, very good lawyer. I turned my back on them. On the ruined man and his monstrous mother, on the shattered dynasty, on the wreckage in the lobby. I walked calmly, my heels clicking on the marble, right past the stunned night manager and out the front doors. I did not go to the gala. I got in my car, and I drove straight to the airport. I was checking out, leaving the entire mess of their lives for them, and the arriving morning papers, to clean up. Thank you so much for listening. I am so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect. And please share your thoughts. Make sure you are subscribed to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.